Okay, so ready to dive into something where, like, seeing is definitely not believing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's what we're talking about today, right?
Right.
Deep fakes,
Right.
and we've got some pretty crazy sources on this stuff.
Yeah.
It's it's really wild to me how good this stuff is getting.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not just like fun and games. You see these things pop up on the internet every once in a while, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
haha, that's pretty funny.
Right, right.
But it's getting to a point where it's pretty serious stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's getting really sophisticated.
Yeah. So like, what are some of the big things that are kind of red flags for you when you think about the implications of this technology?
I mean, the thing that really jumps out to me is the potential to really disrupt elections.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I mean, just think about it. You've got these incredibly realistic videos and audio recordings that can be fabricated. And, our sources are saying that researchers are estimating that like 40% of voters could be swayed by a really convincing deepfake.
Oh wow.
40%. Like, that's a huge chunk of the electorate.
Yeah, that's a really significant number.
And it's not just elections. They can be used to spread misinformation,
Sure.
damage reputations,
Right.
even to like trick people into financial scams.
It's wild. It's like almost every area of life could be touched by this
Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah, it's really pervasive.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're unpacking today is how to spot them in the age of AI.
Right. And it can feel overwhelming,
Yeah.
Like, how are you supposed to tell what's real and what's not?
Right.
But don't worry, we're going to give you the knowledge and the tools you need to arm yourself against these fakes.
Okay. So I like that you said arm yourself because it
Yeah.
does feel like we're entering a new age of like information warfare almost.
Absolutely. Yeah. And knowledge is your best weapon.
So first of all, like how do these things even work? I get that it's AI, but like, is it some supercomputer that only evil geniuses have access to or what?
Well, actually, the tools are becoming more accessible, which is part of the problem. Like our sources mentioned ChatGPT 5 and Midjourney 3.0,
Uh-huh.
and those are platforms almost anyone can use.
So that's kind of scary that that's becoming so widespread.
It is, yeah.
So at like a really basic level, how do these things work?
Well, at the core of it, they're using something called generative adversarial networks, or GANs.
Right.
And essentially what happens is you feed the AI tons and tons of data,
Oh, wow.
like videos, audio images.
So like if I wanted to make a deepfake of you, I would need like all of your YouTube videos,
Yeah.
all of your podcast appearances, everything.
Pretty much, yeah. And the more data you feed it, the better the results are going to be.
So it's basically learning to do an impression of you
Exactly.
based on all that data.
And it's like a super powered impersonator. I mean, you know how good those impersonators are on like late night talk shows or whatever. Imagine that, but amplified like 1,000 times.
Wow. And so it learns how to do this impression, and then it can basically spit out a new video of you doing or saying something you never actually did or said.
Exactly. And that's where the real danger comes in.
Yeah. I mean, and we're already seeing like real world consequences of this, right? I mean, one of our sources mentioned that back in 2023, there was this case of a European leader,
Oh, yeah.
and there was a deep fake audio recording that was released of this guy like admitting to corruption or something like that. And it totally tanks his party's chances in the election.
Oh, absolutely. It spread like wildfire through social media and people just ate it up. I mean, it sounded so real.
Wow. So that's already happening.
It is.
And I mean, our sources suggest that it's just going to get harder and harder to detect these things.
Right. Because as the technology gets better, the fakes are just going to become more and more convincing.
So it all sounds a little bit like a losing battle to me. Like
Yeah.
if it's that easy to make these things and they're getting better all the time, how are we supposed to fight back?
Well, like I said before, knowledge is your best weapon, but it's not just about knowledge. It's about being proactive and using the right tools.
Okay, so what are some of the tools that we can use?
Well, there are a few different approaches.
Hmm?
First of all, there are some really cool detection tools being developed.
So,
For example, Intel has something called FakeCatcher,
yeah.
and it analyzes blood flow in pixels.
How does that work?
Well, it turns out that when your heart pumps blood through your body,
Yeah.
it creates subtle changes in the color of your skin.
Oh, I see.
And this is something that's really difficult for AI to replicate perfectly.
So like a digital lie detector test almost.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And then there's Adobe's content credentials, which is kind of like a digital fingerprint.
Okay.
It verifies the source of the content.
So it's like a seal of authenticity that says, okay, this is the real deal. This hasn't been tampered with.
Exactly.
Okay, so those both sound really promising, but like you said earlier, it's an arms race, right? Won't the fakers find ways to get around these tools?
It's definitely possible, and that's why it's so important to have a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
It's not just about technology, it's about collaboration, too.
So who needs to collaborate?
Well, we need tech companies, governments, fact-checkers. Everyone needs to be working together to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's almost like antivirus software, right? You need those constant updates to make sure you're protected from the latest threats.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, but antivirus software is reacting to things that already exist.
Yeah.
Like a virus has to be out there in the wild before they can create a fix for it. So how do we spot deepfakes that we've never seen before?
That's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
You can't rely on technology alone. You have to be skeptical. You have to question everything you see and hear online.
That's good advice for the internet in general, though, isn't it?
It really is.
So what are some specific things we can do when we see something online that we think might be a deepfake?
Well, first of all, pause before you react, especially to something shocking or outrageous.
So don't just immediately share it on your social media or whatever.
Right, because that's what the creators of these deepfakes want. They want you to spread their content.
Okay, so pause.
Then check the source.
Okay.
Is it a reputable news outlet?
Or some random account you've never heard of before.
Right, exactly.
Okay, what else?
Verify the information, do a reverse image search, see if the same image or video has appeared elsewhere.
And there are also tools like Deepware Scanner, right, that can analyze videos and tell you if they're likely to be fake.
Exactly. And there's also the old saying, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
That still applies in the age of deepfakes.
Yeah, my mom always told me that growing up.
It's good advice.
And it's still relevant today.
Absolutely. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
Yeah, I think we're all getting better at spotting the uncanny valley effect.
Right, those little glitches that give away a fake.
It's like you could just tell something's
Yeah.
not quite right.
Yeah, but remember, the goal of these deepfakes is often to trigger an emotional response.
Uh-huh.
So take a breath, think critically, and don't let your emotions be manipulated.
Okay, so that's a lot of great advice for how to protect ourselves from the negative impacts of deepfakes. But our sources briefly mentioned something kind of interesting, which is the potential for positive uses of this technology.
Yeah, that's a really important point to remember. Any technology can be used for good or bad.
Right, like a hammer can be used to build a house, or it can be used to hurt someone.
Exactly.
So what are some of the potential positive uses of deepfakes?
Well, imagine using deepfakes in education
Okay.
to bring historical figures to life.
So instead of just reading about Abraham Lincoln in a textbook, you could actually see him and hear him speak.
Exactly.
That would be really cool.
And what about in art?
Okay.
You could create entirely new forms of expression.
Yeah, imagine a movie where all the actors are actually deepfakes of classic movie stars.
That's right. Or you could even use deepfakes in therapy.
Oh, wow. How would that work?
Well, imagine someone who's lost a loved one.
Yeah.
They could interact with a deepfake simulation of that person as a way of processing their grief.
That's amazing. It really reframes the whole conversation about deepfakes.
It does.
So we've gone from seeing is not believing to be cautious, be critical, but don't be afraid to explore the possibilities.
Exactly. Deepfakes are a powerful tool.
And like any tool, it's up to us to use it responsibly and ethically.
Right.
I think that's a great place to leave it. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about for all of you listening. Remember, knowledge is power. Now go out there and be informed, be skeptical, and maybe even a little bit inspired.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you next time.